You're here, which means that you've found spirit crumbs, leading you to your inner light worker. I will be sharing how these tiny little hints from the universe have led me to where I am today. I hope that by hearing my story and the stories of others, you'll pick up your own spirit crumbs along the way that will lead you to somewhere magical. Thanks for coming along for the journey. Let's see where it takes us.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode. I'm Emily from the Emily and Andrea podcast.
I'm Andrea from Concrete and Crystals and Spirit Crumbs.
We are so excited you're back for another joint episode. I just wanted to take a quick second because things have been moving and shaking over here at Emily and her stars. And you might have noticed that I didn't say things that make you go woo. And that really is just because, my friends, I need to simplify my life. Running 2 Instagram pages and keeping up with the names and all the things, I simplifying. So this will now and forevermore be the Emily and Her Stars podcast because it just makes life easier. And one of the things you might have also noticed is the artwork is a little different, but other than that, it's still me and still Andrea coming at you at least once a month with combined tarot and astrology. And hopefully, as I am nearing the 5th anniversary of this little podcast, there will be some more episodes coming out very shortly with me actually telling you more about what's going on behind the scenes. So thank you for being here, Andrea. I'm so excited to catch up. This has been one of my favorite collaborations because I remember when we started, gosh, what was it, 2022 or no, it must have been 23.
I started mine January 2021, I think.
Okay.
So it might have been 2023.
Yeah.
It might have been.
And we were like, it'd be easier if we just got together once in a while and did this.
Yeah. And I think when we were doing a lot more solo episodes, both of us. So I think that was part of it, was like, okay, I can only talk to myself about this and feel excited for so much. And then after a while, you do kind of need that other influence. So yeah, it has been such an amazing collaboration. It's pulled me through these last few years, having that one thing a month that I can like count on and look forward to. So yeah, I feel like it's one of those collaborations that was just meant to happen.
Amen. Talk about pulling me through too. I think this is the one ritual I have each and every month getting together with you that has kept me sane. And speaking of sane, how are you hanging in there? We are recording full disclosure on July the 17th. This is the very first day of Barbault's basket, which we will be talking much more about in terms of astrological things happening in the sky. But how did Cancer season treat you? How have you been feeling?
It's been a lot. I think there's been a lot of inner turmoil, which I think does happen in Cancer season with it being a water season. I think I've been rethinking a lot of things. I actually feel like the Mercury retrograde has been, as much as it's been terrorizing us as per usual, I think it also has been helpful though. I think more than ever, I was saying to Emily earlier, I think the perspective shifts have been coming in a lot more with this particular retrograde. And I don't know if it's with the influences of all the other things happening also, but I do feel like there's some inner movement that feels like it's going to be translating to outer movement. And I don't think I've had that feeling in my body. I don't know about anybody else out there, but I feel in my body, like I can feel it in my bones when something's moving. And I have actually had that feeling more consistently, even though outwardly it doesn't look like there's a ton of things happening, but like I can sense it. Like I can feel those things getting closer and closer to reality. Maybe it's that feeling of like manifestation or something happening behind the scenes. But I think this season has been challenging in a lot of ways globally, for sure. I think the wildfires, I was saying to Emily, I cried all the way to work yesterday because I mean, it's further north than I am, but the smoke made its way down here. And it was like driving through fog. There's been so many natural disasters around the world. And I think I feel it so much in my heart that like it's the earth screaming for help. And that's, I think, more than anything, seeing people suffer with these things and then thinking about the animals and the trees and everything, like, that's what lights a fire under me. So I think I'm gonna be doing something. I don't know if it's gonna be in my prints or where it's gonna show up, but I think I'm gonna be doing something on that theme more than I already do. I mean, most of my work is nature-based, but I think what I might do is a bit of a fundraiser where a certain portion will go towards relief efforts because I know I am really seriously moving in that direction with my work. I might even get back into more what I was doing in school, which was a lot more research-based work, more writing to go along with my artwork and maybe book, who knows? This is that feeling that I get when things are sort of like coming together, starting to move through me, everything's been integrating. I think that's one of the things I will say is I think there's been a lot of people having integration periods. I think a lot of us have been in the middle for a long time where we're not really doing the old things anymore. We're not doing something new yet. We're in that middle space. And I think that's where, as much as I don't like physically being in that space, I think my mind actually likes being in that space because I take in a lot of things, I integrate things, I find connections between things I wouldn't have otherwise. So, yeah, I think that integration is starting to turn into something. And I think it'll be coming out in the form of some sort of more nature and climate based work that's going to be coming.
This is the first time I've heard anything of a book and the research, so I'm super excited to see what this leads to. What you were saying about the integration period and being in this, we've talked about the liminal. I feel like we've been in the liminal for 3 years or more, it feels. We've talked a lot in our metaphors about getting in the car and planning the road trip and getting on the highway. Getting stuck in the roundabout was a few months. And I do think we now feel much more grounded in the sense that the trip is the experience, not the destination. I think some of us have resigned ourselves to recognizing that it's not going to go back to what it was, like that version or vision, that nostalgia, right? Mercury and retrograde in Cancer is bringing up this level of nostalgia, but I feel like it's healing that nostalgia and saying, you've got to change your mindset because it's not going to go back. That sense of security that we had, I would say even post or excuse me, pre-COVID is not coming back. It's gonna be different, and we have to create something different. And it's really been interesting to, I agree, see the mindset shifts, not only in myself, but in others, even my husband who doesn't listen, but repeated something back to me that I had said to him in a conversation, and it was like it blew his mind a little bit. I think he was integrating some of my knowledge. Those of you who are married, you know what I mean. But it was very exciting. I was like, "Oh my god, it's happening." So, yeah, I do think this is a very introspective Mercury retrograde. So many of our retrogrades have been in air signs, ironically enough, and we're in all of 2026 is water signs, and we've even had some hybrids in there too. Half air, half water, or half air, half fire. But the fact that each and every one of these, like we had the Pisces, now we've got Cancer, and we're going to have Scorpio in the fall. It's I think a very big emotional healing. So I'm interested to see how it plays out in the fall when Venus is also retrograde with it. I was talking to someone who was talking about how, it's summer, it's Cancer season. Like we want to be with our people, we want to be out. And none of us really have that feeling. It's like, I want to be in my house. I'm a little emotional. Some days I'm a little homicidal, not literally, figuratively. I was pretty cranky yesterday, dealing with our emotions, but kind of at home and in private. I don't need anybody else to add to what I'm already contending with.
I don't need witnesses to these crimes of emotions that I'm having. Yeah, definitely. Definitely a little more internal. Yeah, I think it is interesting to see even because I've been public facing more. I've been out in the world a little bit more this year than I have in the last 5 years. And it is interesting to see and to hear the things people are talking about, to hear it in a good way, like hearing more people kind of repeating similar feelings, similar thoughts, similar hopes, it is really nice to have that reinforcement and it kind of makes you feel less alone and like the way you want to see the world and the vision that you have for community and that sort of thing to hear more people looking at that of like how can we come together and like what isn't working anymore. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see now what Leo, what some fire brings into this energy because we are all a little bit tender, I think, right now.
Yeah, so let's dig into a little bit of who is Leo? What is Leo all about? Leo is the only fixed fire sign that we have in all of the zodiac. And it's usually when we look at ancient astrology or you look at Egyptian or sometimes Greek, even the wheel in the tarot deck, the card has all four fixed signs. It represents Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus, and Leo. Leo is always shown as the lion. And traditionally, the idea around Leo season in the summer, it is ruled by the sun. This is our hot, dry time of the year. This is anciently when we would have seen the star Sirius at its peak. So this represents this kind of king or authoritarian like energy predating some of the downfall of goddess cultures. We started to see this represent the king more than the queen or the goddess. A lot of times, ancient astrology represented each of the planets as they were both male and female. They were androgynous, I want to say. But when we started to move away from exalting the divine feminine, we attributed male and female characteristics to the planets. And that's where the sun then became the representation of the king. And very often, I think this is interesting, particularly because we're going to be moving into an eclipse season in Leo, that they would warn the kings to stay out of the sun on the day of the eclipse. Here in the United States, the Navajo Nation, if there's an eclipse, they do not go outside, and it is not considered safe to even look at pictures of the eclipse. Harmful intentions are released within the eclipse. But Leo is traditionally with this fixed fire sign, it's moving from the place of deep inner knowing that's fueled by passion, it's fueled by love. A lot of times Leo will be called the lion-hearted. It's rooted in this feeling of serving a divine purpose that is you're leading the way, but you're doing it for a greater good. And keep in mind, Leo is opposite of Aquarius. So there is this push-pull between what is better for the people and what the people want versus I have a vision. I have this idea that I believe so strongly in that you can unite behind me and I will lead you to that place. One of the things about this particular Leo season, we're pretty new now to having Pluto in Aquarius opposite Leo. The generation born to those who were in World War One, okay, right? These are the baby boomers. They were born with Pluto in Leo. And to a lot of baby boomers, you can see the excess of things, belongings, needing things to look a certain way, that you can gain authority if you play the part of looking successful, if you play the part of looking like you have it all figured out and you come from money or you come from status in some way. And that is really starting to fall apart. And particularly right now, where we're going to have Pluto opposite Jupiter in Leo. So Pluto's in Aquarius, Jupiter's in Leo, and they're opposite each other at exactly 4 degrees. And that's what's beginning to happen with Barbault's basket as we're entering in. So maybe not the deepest dive into traditionally what we talk to in terms of Leo, but I think important in terms of how the astrology is going to play out over the next 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah, I think Leo is an interesting sign because I feel like I experience it differently every year. And I think with a lot of the signs, but particularly Leo, I think some years it feels more like the playful side of it comes out more like that, fun, spunky, like childlike quality. And then other times it is a bit more of that, like, where do I want to be leading? And like, what do I want to be showing to the world? Maybe that passion side of it, maybe that part of it, and that lion-hearted side of it, where it's like, yeah, the greater good is coming out a lot more this year. I do think it's that push-pull with Aquarius that's coming forward the most for me, at least. We're not quite in it yet, but I am sort of feeling that come up.
Interestingly, too, that, Leo should be in all of us representing that part that, like you said, is playful, childlike. It also is romance, it's flings, it's being in love and that and having fun and expressing ourselves and being seen for expressing ourselves in a way that makes us feel authentically witnessed, which, oh my God, I think is what every single person is craving at this point. Because for so long, we have been trying to live up to this standard that says, oh, you're going to be an influencer. You need to have X, Y, and Z, or you're going to be in finance. You have to have X. I mean, I remember when we were growing up, the job options were like doctor, lawyer, nurse. What do you like, what category do you want to fit into? Because you better pick a job or a career that's gonna mean something. You don't wanna just pick a do you really wanna be an artist? Like, I remember saying to my dad, I really wanted to be an archaeologist. And he was like, oh, so you're gonna be poor and live in the desert and drive a Volkswagen the rest of your life? Now I'm like, yeah, I wish I had picked that. But to a 13-year-old, you're like, well, no, I don't want to do that. That sounds awful. So it is interesting how that Leo influence from a generation has shaped how we feel we are supposed to show up. And I think that is the pendulum that is finally starting to fall apart and swing because we're also going to have the nodes shifting. I mean, there's so many signs pointing to this. So I'm excited to dive in. I'm really curious what the cards are that you got.
It's funny, while you were talking, I just got this hit because I looked down at the first card and when I was pulling the cards, I don't count jumpers usually. If a card jumps out and I'm like, no, we're doing this methodically. I have the weeks written down. I know what I'm doing. There's a whole spread thing happening here. But the 9 of Wands had flown out. I put it back in. I shuffled for a while because I was like, let's just move this energy. We're going to be organized. And what card came out? 9 of Wands. And just now I was like, why do I feel like I've seen this recently? It was the last card of Cancer season. We literally left off with the 9 of Wands. And so this is a way of, I think, Spirit saying this energy is going to feel the same. Most of Cancer season was Wands. And the fact that we have the 3 of Wands, the 10 of Wands, the 9 of Wands, we're continuing with this 9 of Wands. It's actually kind of like a comical message from the universe being like, no, just keep feeling that in between where you're almost there. You're almost there. I promise it's coming. Just hang on a little bit longer, as if we haven't been hearing that for 5 years. It just honestly, to me, though, with that showing up and with Spirit being so serious about having this come out twice in a row, being like, no, we're not putting this away. We need this right now. We need this feeling of hope and being so close and standing tall. Like, I think that's a phrase that I haven't put with this card before, but the wand that she's holding, even though it's part of the fence that is happening here with so you have if you know the Light Seers Tarot or if you get my newsletter, I always put a little picture of each card, but she's holding one of the parts of a fence if they're all wooden, but hers is very tall. Like the rest of them are all at like her hips weight, like her hips length. And then this one is very tall. It's taller than her. And she's looking upwards. And I think we maybe just need that reminder that, like, yes, it's taking time. But if we've gotten this far, that classic, like, if you've gotten this far, don't turn away before the good thing happens. But I truly mean Spirit. I think Spirit means that this time. They're saying, no, like there's intention behind this. There's a reason you need to really hang on for this period. And also, I think with the wands being also a creative force in a way, I think it's saying, like, keep going on whatever you're doing just because there's no results right now, just because maybe you're not getting the reception you want. We're going into Leo season where you are going to be able to put it out there into the sun. Different people are going to see it. You're integrating something. Maybe there's just a finishing touch you need, or maybe it's just not the right audience right now. But there is this feeling that Spirit is saying, I need you to trust me. I need you to keep moving. I don't like it. I feel like I've heard it many times. And now it's getting to that point where it's like that same person that keeps saying, "Oh, I'll pay you back next week." And then you're like, it's been 6 years, but okay. The universe is creating something behind the scenes. There is still that creativity energy. We're just not seeing the output of it yet. We're only doing the input part of it at this point. And I think that whether we choose to believe it or not, that was from just the first few days of the season this time, July 22nd to 25th. So I think it's, like, understandable that we would just finish off the week with this energy. I think it's not asking too much of us to add a few more days to that energy before we see a shift. And going into a fire season, I think it's appropriate to have the wands stay with us a little bit longer.
Sometimes this is when you can't make this shit up. The theme I had for July 19th through the 25th is stand tall, open wide. Andrea's face. Sometimes we need to be a video, I tell you. Can you even? So I think the 9 of wands is exactly the energy that was supposed to be expressed this week. It's quite a week, this one. We have on the 19th Mars sextile to Saturn. That's a positive angle between those two. That's creating harmony, it's creating opportunities. And Mars is in at this point, he's hanging out still in Gemini. And so this harmonious angle to Saturn and Aries, it's like Mars is ready to charge forward with like all 12 ideas that it had before it even woke up and some left over from yesterday. But Saturn's like making you pump the brakes a little bit and making sure that you only move forward on what's going to truly serve you. And I think this plays back into what you and I were talking about, these moments of clarity that we've had during this Cancer retrograde. It's been integration. And so, likely, I feel like the things we would have picked even 3 weeks ago are going to be different now moving forward. Um, the 20th, we have Jupiter trine Neptune. So this is good. Again, trines are playing nice. This is an alliance. But then Jupiter is also opposite Pluto. So this is where we're in this formation of Barbault's basket. And the basket, and I am going backwards to cover some of the astrology coming into this particular week because it is all this Nine of Wands energy. The basket has happened before, not in this area and not with these exact planets. That's what makes this one so special. Andre Barbault was an astrologer. He was French. He spent his entire astrological career focusing on the outer planets and the synchronicities and patterns that when they're in connection with one another, what happens in society. And he felt that when we got to this moment in July of 2026, that it was really a threshold breaking momentum, moving forward. He used words like something around the idea of change, even the word change is not big enough to encompass the scope of what is possible for us if we take and use this energy in the best possible way. So, for the first time in nearly a century, Jupiter in Leo is in this rare trine with Neptune and Aries. So they're both in fire signs. These are very future forward moving. It's like your imagination is moving really fast. You're having visionary ideas and downloads and spiritual awakenings. All of those things are part of this energy. And it lasts a few days. It's not like a one and done. This is lingering for days. Then we've got Jupiter again in Leo, but opposite Pluto in Aquarius. These are two fixed signs with very powerful planets pulling against each other. Who's right? Who's going to win? Is it going to be social ripples from Aquarius, or is it going to be, Jupiter expanding sort of these old patriarchal, is it all show? Like if we just keep up appearances, it's all going to be fine. But behind the scenes, we are seeing the cracks. Even in the last 24 hours, we've seen more and more massive cracks. So because Pluto is being supported by Neptune and fiery Aries, because all of these planets are interconnected with one another, I feel like this is the beginning of gaining some traction. Okay, so the sun moves into Leo on the 22nd. We have Jupiter square Chiron. This is a little tricky because, again, Jupiter is expansion, but not always at the benefit. It can make good things good, it can make bad things extra big. And it has a tendency to blow things out of proportion, or it wants to escape sometimes because, "Ugh, I don't want to deal with it. I just want it to be fun, or I want it to feel more exciting." Because it's going to be in this configuration with Chiron, I do think it's encouraging you to get in touch with, you know, feeling bigger than you've let yourself be, not shrinking back into these old versions of yourself, really standing strong and saying, "No, I deserve to share what I'm thinking. I deserve to share what I feel. I am worth enough, and it doesn't have to look like anybody else." The 23rd, we have Mercury retrograde ending at about 6:58 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So at the end of the day. And Mercury at the very end is going to sextile in this beautiful harmonious connection to Venus. So I think this is gonna feel, kinda like a deep breath and maybe a hug even a little bit. It's going to Mercury is gonna spend the whole next month retracing its steps all the way back across Cancer again, but I do feel like this is kind of the rainbow at the end. And then by the 24th, this is when the basket starts to pull apart. So Jupiter pulls away from its 4 degrees of Leo. Uranus is still hanging out at about 4 degrees of Gemini, but it is retrograde, so it's backing up at this point. Neptune is breaking apart, and Pluto is still holding strong at 4, but it's gonna be retrograde and moving as well. So all of these things, they're just shifting enough that it's losing some of its intensity, but Jupiter itself is moving the quickest, and that's really what's forcing this break apart of the basket. So it's a full week, and like you said, the whole stand tall, that is exactly what I think this energy is saying.
That is insane that you had that. Like, that phrase has never come in when I opened that card, and the fact that it dropped in so clearly, and that card was so insistent on coming out. Another thing I just realized as I was sitting here, because I still had my finger in the page from Cancer season, is that the retrograde ending, it kind of makes sense that we would be holding that energy because then it's going to be going back the other direction. So it's like spirit saying, no, you're still going to feel it by the end of this week. And then on that topic of retrograde, you are not going to believe this, but you will believe this. For July 26th to August 1st, I put the 9 of Cups, and that was how we started the retrograde. From June 28th to July 4th in Cancer season, we had the 9 of Cups. So we're going back into the energy, but it's the best part of the energy. The 9 of Cups is like wish fulfillment, things coming through. And so the fact that we were just saying we were holding on for a reason, this is so interesting because also they're both nines, completing a cycle, getting through that last bit of energy that you need to release. So anything you need to say goodbye to, anything you need to move, anything you need to call in, anything that you know is holding you back from that next step, you have to start doing it. And I think personally, whenever I've been in a plateau like this for a while where everything's felt the same, you're in the liminal, you're waiting, even when you just feel like you have less energy, but that's kind of what spirit's asking us to do is to say, no, you're going to be tired, but you have to really take advantage of this energy. It may take you a while to get into this like calm energy again, but if there are things you need to do, put that effort in. And I think we kind of forget because we get kind of bored and blah, and we don't really want to do anything if we don't think we're going to get results from it. We want to like be guaranteed something's going to happen because we're just so tired. But I think in a way, if we kind of think about it in that, you know, physics sort of thing of like it's harder to move an object at rest, right? Once you get going, it's easier to keep going. Like when I think at my most productive times, I was already so busy, but I just fit things in. And I think it is in the times when I'm not doing anything that I'm more hesitant to say yes to anything because I'm like, I don't want to do anything. I'm tired, I'm not in the going out mood. I haven't gotten, put on makeup in 3 weeks, like that sort of energy. But when I'm already busy, I just fit it in. I schedule things in, and I feel like I'm getting back into that mode a lot. Like, I'm a lot busier. Like, this time last year, I was doing hardly anything, So I feel like that is definitely the energy we're going into. And what better time than a fire season, Leo season, when you feel more like putting yourself out there and saying yes and starting something new and putting fresh energy into something. There's something really interesting about Spirit bringing us back into two cards from the previous season at the end of a Mercury retrograde. I think it does totally make sense that we would be revisiting that. So anything that felt really good, and I mean, for anybody in Canada or the United States, like that's when we had Canada Day and Independence Day. So anything that maybe you got a hint of that was like a yes, or like that person felt really interesting. Maybe I want to connect with them again. Maybe they nudged you forward with something. Maybe they give you encouragement for something. Really capitalize on those things and start to move forward with them, because I think there's a very unique energy happening right now where we're coming out of that basket, the energy is pulling apart. It's like, okay, what it feels like to me when I just got a vision of, it's almost like all of the planets were with us, like doing that thing where you put all your hands together and you go, okay, break. And then everybody goes and does their part. But like everyone still has to do something with that energy. You can't all just leave and nobody does anything. And then you're like, why did we lose? Like in a game, everybody still has their part to play. Right. And I think we have to keep that in mind, even when the reminders aren't there so fresh and, we're not physically maybe with our family in the same kind of a celebratory way. That energy is still with you. Like, you have to take that and do something with it. The things that make us special, the things that we know we're good at, we have to do them for people to be able to see that we're good at them. We can't just, like, know it in our heads and assume that everyone else knows it too, right? And I think that's part of this more internal energy we've been in. I mean, integration is wonderful, and maybe we'll be using it in a new way, and that is what makes it different this time around after having the retrograde. But I think that's the one thing that Spirit's really trying to move us forward with, is like, this is the end of the cycle. We're not doing this maybe thing anymore. We're going to see some results if we start moving forward with these things that we already know we want to do, but just really trusting that we're meant to move forward with them and that we're meant to see the results once we get going. But I do find it really interesting to have two nines in a row and two cards that we specifically had in the last month during retrograde. So very interesting energy coming from Spirit.
Ugh, I love the connection back to the beginning of retrograde because we wrote down wish fulfillment, and the theme I picked for this week is dream on purpose. I know. It's like we're too good at this. We used to say have we done this before allegedly? I think we're getting pretty good now. Um, this week is a little gosh. I feel like this is the week where we might really see what have been cracks turn into like a fracture or something bigger happening. Um, so let me explain a little bit because the 26th we have the North Node and the South, like North Node moves into Aquarius and the South Node moves into Leo. This is a big deal. What are the nodes? Long story short, they are the they have to do with the points of the moon and how they move through the ecliptic and the zodiac signs as they move around us. It's more a not necessarily a mathematical, but it's a it's much more of a theoretical movement than it is necessarily an exact thing we can track. But all that to say, we do track them because this is then shaping how all of the eclipses from here on out are going to be moving. So we are coming out of Virgo, North Node, Pisces, South Node, and into the North Node in Aquarius, South Node in Leo. This I think is what's going to catapult this energy that has just been sort of ignited in Leo season with the Pluto opposition and the basket and all the things. Jupiter was connected to Chiron. We're healing things. This north-south node configuration is going to last through the end of March in 2028. So our eclipse is coming up here in just a few weeks, in the middle of Leo season, will be hybrid. So they'll be partially in Aquarius and Leo and partially in Virgo and Pisces. So we're still finishing out just a touch of that energy. Collectively, I think this is a point where we generally see, I hate to say it, but a recession or a market correction housing market correction, something like that. We're kind of ending this ego-driven, crazy fueled years that we are all exhausted from, and really coming back in with like, how can we be generous with one another? With the North Node in Aquarius, it's like, no, 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 no. We're done with that old version. We want to do something behind a leader or behind a group that makes a difference. On the 27th, we have the sun. This is what, yeah, this one feels big. The sun is opposite Pluto. So it's in Leo. Pluto's over there still hanging out in Aquarius. So there's already that push pull frustration. And then Pluto is still trine Neptune. This is, I just wrote the word pivot. Like Ross in Friends, the Leo sun is going to really feel into that shrewd, secretive bit of Pluto and kind of get us all synced up on the same page. But I feel like this is where power plays and power people and the old systems who think they've got it all figured out and we can't see through it all are starting to finally break down. But with Neptune and Aries, things that either were subsisting on a bubble like energy are going to burst, or someone might feel like they need to puff up their presentation to you or their idea to you to make it worth something. So just you're going to be able to see through things a little bit easier than maybe you have in the past. And the power, I think, in this dynamic comes from knowing when to step back, like to trust that inner voice finally, or when to lean in. On the 28th, Venus is going to be squared off to Mars. This is a hard day to negotiate because this is like your heart and your motivation going at it. And Venus is in, I hate to say this Virgo, but it's critical. Venus doesn't like being in Virgo already. It's not happy here. It's not a natural feeling for it. So instead of focusing on like the faults or the problems with someone, like what are you going to focus on to make a difference? Mars is like, I'm just trying to get your attention. It's over in Gemini and let's come up with 1,000 ideas. And Venus in Virgo is like, how are we going to actually make it happen? But it might be pushing that to happen before we've sorted the ideas. So you can see where that frustration comes up. On the 29th, here's where we have the sun conjunct Jupiter. So they're joined up together today. This is in more modern pop astrology, they called it the Day of Miracles. It happens once every year when the sun and Jupiter cazimi. So Jupiter or the sun catches up to Jupiter, or the Jupiter passes in front of the sun. Either way, it burns off this residual energy is the idea behind a cazimi. It's an opportunity for the planet to be reborn. And with the sun and bountiful Jupiter in like radiant Leo, it's the first time they've met here since 2014. So it's going to amplify your creativity and your courage and get you excited about the passion projects and like the things we were talking about that you maybe wouldn't have chosen even 3 weeks ago. But the full moon is opposite in Aquarius, conjunct Pluto. So again, we have this face off of Jupiter and Pluto, but now we're expanding both of them. So Pluto's getting pumped up with the full moon, and Jupiter is getting pumped up with the sun. This to me is the catalyst point of some of this energy that we have felt. And I know I've said this before. I really did think with Mars and Uranus and Gemini, I mean, we had such a precedence that something big was going to happen, and then it kind of didn't. And everyone was like, "Mer, mer, astrology." All I can say is that we can show you the patterns in the sky and what has traditionally happened and say there's a probability that this could happen again. I don't think this is as electrically charged, but this is like huge bursts or fears shrinking or something being unveiled, of being seen in a new way that it hasn't been before. And Aquarius is reminding us that all the creation, so all the things Leo wants to do, Aquarius is like, yeah, but all has to start in the mind. It all starts in your head and that connection between you and your physical and source. And so what is the moon going to illuminate in that? How are you going to look at it differently with Pluto there? Is it going to be, seeing through something that we've all fallen for in some way? I don't know. There, like I said, I'm still pulling the threads apart on that one, but it feels particularly potent, I would say, that day. Um, and sorry, because there's just so much this month. Anything else I wanted to cover? That's the 29th. I think that's good. That gets us up to the 1st. So I'm gonna pass the buck over now.
That is very interesting energy, and I think, I just looked and for inviting shadow for August, I picked the 8 of Cups. Super interesting because it does feel like even at that beginning of the month, with you just leading into it, there's that energy of like, yeah, we might have to let something go. Things aren't going to be perfect. There's going to be a bit of a struggle there, but it's moving into something that we know is going to be positive. And you said something about like there being this expectation of like there being a big change, a big movement, like movement happening going into this energy. And the only phrase that I wrote down, if we remember, unlike Emily with her very detailed notes, wrote one phrase for each each card. But what I wrote was big change causing movement, but grief. Now this is interesting. Because for August 2nd to the 8th, I have the 7 of Wands, which is an inherently like powerful card in itself. But it's this energy of maybe knowing something spiritually within yourself. Like a 7 is usually a card connected to wisdom and spirit and, a little bit of internal thought. But this card specifically is like protect all of your ideas, protect your energy from the people that are the naysayers or the people that are going to try and contradict you for no reason really. And I think projection is a big part of this. Like people are projecting their fears onto you or their ideas or their past experiences that are not true for you. And like Emily said, yes, we can predict, we can put the patterns out there, but it doesn't mean it's going to turn out the exact same every time. Sometimes that energy evolves and is used differently. And I think that's where like sometimes people have the best intentions. It's not that they have ill intentions when they're telling you like, oh, that might not work. It's just they're thinking when I tried it, it didn't work. But we're in a different world now. Everything is different right now. Every single thing that we try to do is going to be received differently because as a collective, we have had to shift every part of daily life in the last 6 years. We haven't had a normal. Like everybody's like, what's normal? There's no normal. If we can pretend there is, and we all have to do that on a daily basis. We have to create a routine for ourselves. We have to create something that feels normal in order to exist in the world and go to work where you're sitting at a keyboard, like, why am I here when the world's falling apart? We all have to tell ourselves that there's some form of normal daily life, even though we know everything is literally shifting beneath us. It's just knowing that all the time, 24/7 is too much. Nobody can be, 100% aware of that all the time. But where this energy is interesting to me is if we take this, like we're going from a 9 to an 8 essentially, because like this 8 feels like it's for the first to a 7. We're kind of like doing this sort of, I wouldn't say we're going backwards. Obviously, we're not going backwards in terms of like what we're doing in life, but it's this awareness of like we only go back to a 7. There's nothing below a 7 this month. So it's almost like saying once you get back to spirit, once you get to that point that got you through to the end that has been pushing us forward, it's like, okay, we're done with the daily 1, 2, 3 building blocks. We're not doing that anymore. What we need is like what we're downloading from spirit and push it through. We're not going back to step 1 anymore. We are too exhausted. We don't care. No one's going to actually do anything with that information. You just need to know what is new, what is now, and how do I move that forward. And now with that grief element, that's where all of the nostalgia and the thinking backwards and everything we've had in the last month of like what things used to be like. And yes, in some ways, we all have something about the world before 2020 that we miss. But on the other hand, I think there's a lot of things that we would have thought as being just hypothetical that are happening now that we can see people talking about, that we can see people moving towards. And I think it has to be that understanding that we can only have those as glimmers of what we want to see going forward. If there's something you really miss, maybe you met up for coffee more. Okay, well, then we're building that in. But the rest of it's not coming with us. And I think that grief is part of it. Like, yes, big change causing movement, but grief. That's every big change I've ever made. Yes, I've made these big changes that have been wonderful. And like, I will have days that I feel homesick for like a tree or like a part of my walk. There's a cottage we used to rent that was sold and someone owns it now. There's those pieces of grief that we always hold a little bit, but those are also our best memories. Honor that time in your life or that version of yourself. We're only taking from 7 and above, from our spirits, from our hearts, and from our downloads. That's all we're using as this material moving forward. We don't have to do things the same way in order to have them be honored moving forward. I think the Aquarius Leo energy, now that I think about it, has always been quite a reset for me and like my why I want to do something. Like my Venus is in Aquarius. So my creativity always does come out a lot this time of year, especially with that full moon. When you're talking about that full moon, it has David Bowie energy to me. I don't know why, but I even did like a reel about it a few years ago. You can probably find it back on my Instagram somewhere. So do try to take advantage of that full moon energy, that like day of miracles, as they say, but like that energy for sure, that full moon, I think will be really interesting to see what plays out on the other side of it. But for this week from the 2nd to the 8th, I think the residual from that will be protecting whatever it is that comes through and making sure that you're not letting nostalgic waves from other people shape how you are gonna move forward. And I think that there's gonna be a lot of really interesting art. I would be suggesting, for some reason, this is coming forward really strongly. If you haven't joined Substack, there's something about that energy with people experiencing things and sharing them through words, even maybe threads. I think this is gonna be a really busy social media week. I don't know what else is gonna happen this week collectively, but you're gonna have to protect your energy, maybe spend more energy on the creating part, a little less on the scrolling part, but I think you're gonna see some really interesting things go viral that you might not be expecting.
Oh, that's fascinating. I'm curious to see what pans out because a lot of astrologers have been talking about how potent that full moon with the Pluto Jupiter connection, but how this just really feels like this is the ignition point. It's like lighting the pilot light. And you have to wait for the hot water heater to get going, but things are lit from this point. And I think it might be the first time we feel it. It's interesting. The words I chose for this week were slow down to heal. It's very healing. And whatever comes up, we're going to need to kind of spend that time sitting with ourselves. But to me, I keep getting very turtle-like energy, and that's what's been, I think, so frustrating about this year is that here we are, we're in the fire horse, right? We were like, "Let's bring in the change." I wanted to tear across the country, go across the world. Okay, we've got fires, fair enough, but I don't think this is what we expected, and it feels like a slog through. But keep in mind, we've got all of the outer planets in new energy, and they're only at 4 degrees. So it's not like they're even fully up to speed yet. There's something to be said about this. Maybe it's more about I'm just getting the idea around tying a team of horses together to get moving. But the first week of August, it's like the emotional soup is kind of moving, and whatever we're left with after this moon is what we kind of have to contend with. By the third, Chiron is stationing retrograde. So it's going to start dragging itself back through Taurus. This is the first time it's retrograde in Taurus since 1983. This is a long time. We were coming out of recession. We were changing leadership. There were a lot of things happening around this point, which means really, I think there's a lot of baggage around money, stability, feeling like you either never have enough or you are never enough. This is a big thing we're going to be collectively healing with this Chiron energy for the next 7 years. It's going to be back next April. I mean, it's still in Taurus for a while, but this is just our mini preview. And, healing sometimes isn't about what you do behind the door. It's more about like opening closet and cleaning the damn thing out. Like, am I hoarding stuff back here? What do I need to get rid of? So, helping, I think there's transformation of some kind and looking in our closet and finally saying, either like physically, I have things that I can donate, or emotionally, I have things that I can donate and help with. But being more willing to share our ideas and what we have in a way that makes some sort of unified difference is just the energy I get out of it. Um, Midweek, the energy kind of softens because on August 6th, we have the Taurus quarter moon. Um, and this just helps, I think, maybe ground us a little bit. It gives us that reminder that not everything is urgent and a crisis and needs our energy right now. We're gonna feel that pull, and I think, like you said, there's gonna be something on social media that's gonna kind of captivate us, and it's like, "Oh my god, what do I have to do? What can I do?" And I think this is more about, um, being mindful of your energy and where you have enough to give and what you can give from surplus, not from, before you've even taken care of yourself or your loved ones. Um, Venus also enters Libra on the 6th, and it's gonna be there through September 10th, along with the Sun trining, so forming that alliance with Saturn. So the 6th is kind of a pivotal first moment. It's really the only other astrological event that week, but I think it's really healing and lovely in some way. I think we have the power to collectively and individually steer things in a more compassionate direction, but it's forcing us to realize that we have to use our own connections and our own wisdom, and we're looking to do things in a way that we never have before. I totally agree with you that, like, the old way is dead. We were used to systems or structures or patterns or these things that have worked. It's nothing like that anymore. It's a reset. We're done. We're doing it in new ways. So finding ways to picture yourself succeeding. This is that long-term vision and breaking it down into small steps, but don't lose the vision. That Leo energy wants you to stay excited and emboldened and lit about it and to feel it before you can see it. That's one of the big messages I think for August is to feel the future, feel what you want, get emotionally ready before you actually see it happening.
Yeah, that feel it before you see it energy is huge. And I think going back to that now at this stage when things are starting to actually materialize is a really good way to just reinforce that, like what Emily was saying. And then also the energy of the fire horse, when you said it feels like putting a team of forces together. The vision I was already having in my head before you said that was like, we feel like it's really slow, like that slow turtle energy. But what I was kind of laughing to was spirit in my head is the fact that like before we had cars and trains and all these things, like, it would take you weeks to get anywhere by horse, but it was still the fastest mode of transportation at the time. And then this idea that is coming up for me a lot that, yes, there's a lot of, like, AI and digital art and things that are fast tracking. I keep my pulse on what's happening out there, but it doesn't mean I have to change the way that I'm doing it because I like being connected and I like being grounded in what I'm doing by hand. So just keeping in mind that if there's something that's working for you, it doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna be left in the dust because you don't do it the new fastest way possible. The connections you make with people, the tools that you use, hold on to those things because they will actually be really important. The chariot is also a 7. With us having, the 7 of wands, that 7 energy is already there. So it's like, yeah, slowing down to a pace that feels good for you is going to put you ahead because you're not gonna burn out. But for August 9th to 15th, speaking of sevens, we have another 7 card. So this is another one of the patterns that was coming up, the 7 of cups. So we've gone wands, cups, 9977. So there's really interesting energy happening with spirit this month. Sometimes when we know we have to make a change, we'll think of any other thing we could possibly do before we'll do the obvious thing. And I think my whole life has been that. Like, I was in art class every day as my homeroom, and, when my teacher told my parents, like, Andrea could go to university, I didn't think he meant with for art, even though he was my art teacher, like, and I spent my whole life finding other ways to be creative, going to school for visual merchandising arts and working in merchandising, and then I was like, "Oh, I have to be an interior designer if I wanna go back and do something creative," and then it's like, "No, just go to school for art." "Oh, yeah, I can do that." So sometimes we do take the long way to get to the very obvious thing, but spirit is kind of saying to you now, like, yes, look at all your options. No one expects you at almost 30 to go to art school. That sounds insane in the old way of things. Might still be insane. Verdict's still out. But I think the fact that spirit's saying, like, if there's something that feels comfortable to you, doesn't mean it's going to be the best option. Sometimes the thing that pushes you out of your comfort zone, but is nagging at you and is showing up in your dreams and in your thoughts and in the conversations you randomly have with people, those are the things maybe to choose right now because nothing's set in stone. We don't have a normal. We don't have these rigid structures that are working that anybody can point to it and say, that's the way to go. Now, any of those things people are pointing at, we can be like, what do you mean it's falling apart? Choose the thing that is calling to you, that is in your head, you can't ignore. This energy is obviously coming in very strong. This 7 energy, again, it's more connected to spirit and to the way you feel about it. It's an emotional card. So sometimes we see it as more of a logical, like, oh, okay, the 7 of cups, there's options. What's the best option? Objectively, nobody knows at this point. We cannot predict where any of these paths are going to take you. More than ever, it's really important to go with what feels right to you. There's an element of risk to anything. There's an element of risk to staying with the same thing and putting all your eggs in one basket too. So I just have to put that out there that that's another thing spirit is saying. That's why there's 7 cups and not 1 cup, right? Like the 1 cup is where you're starting, the Ace of Cups. That's a starting point, but it's not, okay, you're only gonna do that one thing forever. That's why that trope of everyone hating their lives, hating their work, and coming home miserable that we always saw, it was like, "Oh, okay, then if that's how I feel, I must be normal. That must be good. That must be mean I'm doing the right thing. If I feel terrible after work every day and that's all I do is complain, I'm on the right track." But I think we all can agree that that's not ideal and that there are other options. And that's kind of what Spirit's saying here is like, yes, there is beauty in consistency, but there's also beauty in pivoting, that energy of pivots that Emily was saying. Sometimes Spirit gives you very obvious signs that it's time to make a change. And again, going back to our theme for August, which is the Eight of Cups, walking away from things that no longer serve you, letting those float away and choosing yourself. So big change causing movement, but grief. That is kind of also part of this idea of the 7 of Cups is yes, you're going to make a choice, and that means you're not choosing something else, but there's a bigger picture. It's not something that is going to reveal itself right away. Either way, you're going to have to trust, and you're going to have to trust yourself to make the choice. That's why spirit putting the choices in front of you. The spirit is not putting choices in front of you and 7 of your closest friends to make a choice. It's you specifically, how do you feel about your own specific life? And if everyone else says something and you think it's a terrible idea and you're feeling a knot in your stomach as people are telling you to go a different way, that's also information. So that's sort of what spirit's showing me is like there you wouldn't have multiple options if you had to just do one path forever. There's reasons why it's showing up in this pattern. We've had 2 nines to end the cycle from before to see evidence that things are moving in a good direction. Having the energy of the 7 of wands, protecting your energy, not listening to projections and saying, what do I want to do? It's like we have this 2 weeks bubble of this 7 energy of having the creativity, the spiritual protection, and the 7 of cups, like the emotional understanding of yourself. We have this time to like process. We had all that time of integration. Now using that again to like tune in, like, how did I feel when this was coming up? How do I feel in this sort of scenario? Maybe you do a meditation to feel into each of them and imagine walking through the day for each option. But this is about you and your energy and how you're going to feel doing this for however long you decide to do it.
Yeah, I love everything you said about that. I claimed this week or themed it as be the experiment because I feel like you said, the options that we've got are stale. And it's like, you've got to try something and you don't necessarily have anything to prove. You don't have proof of how this is going to turn out. You just have to try it. There's a lot of energy in August about have faith. And that's faith and believing in something. It's what pulls us through. And I do think that is a little bit of Leo's energy. Jupiter also rules Sagittarius, which is about faith and believing in something so strongly. So this week there's a lot happening. Mercury and Jupiter, though, I think are the big players. So on the 9th, Mercury is done with retrograde. It's already back and it's moving into Leo. So it's going to be in Leo until August 25th, a short amount of time. It is booking at this point. But that's going to amplify our mind around these ideas of being big and being bold and trying to feel into our opinions and the things that mean something to us, creating that atmosphere, I think likely globally where everyone might feel loud and opinionated and dramatic. And this might be like, I just got to try something different. If it's getting your news from a different source, if it's looking at something in a different way, whatever your experiment personally is, it's just a really good environment also to pitch your ideas or to take that bold thing that you've never thought you were brave enough to say online or to try in your business or to share with a loved one. Just really try your hardest to give it your full, authentic, heartfelt sort of pitch. Just don't over exaggerate. Don't over promise because everything's going to look a little too good to be true. And I think there's something to be said about how things are being presented to us under this energy because there's an old way and there's a new way. On Sunday, let's see, the Venus Pluto alliance. This one I think is going to start spilling secrets. So Venus is really a big player today because it's connecting to almost everything in the sky. And what's interesting is it's in fair and balanced Libra, but it's going to be sitting in opposition with Neptune. So this is going to make you feel hazy in regards to what you actually want and what feels fair and who wants what. It's like you're going to have a hard time finding balance in anything, but it's forming helpful connections to both Pluto and Uranus, which is really good for shaking up those new routines and finding something new to stand on. Things that maybe used to hold you back are not going to anymore, but you're not going to necessarily know if it's going to work out, which is where courage is going to come into play with this. Don't be afraid to experiment, even if you can't see that outcome. But then Mercury opposite Pluto is going to cause kind of mixed signals or mind games. So if you feel, I would say, overstimulated, confused, don't overthink it. Just get really direct, simple, clear questions. Is this for me? Will this work for me in 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, 5 years? That kind of just get kind of laser focused on it. And that'll help you clear some of the clutter faster than if you wait around for someone else to give you the idea that it's going to work. This is really about that personal trust. Thankfully, though, I mean, Mercury's going to be connected to Uranus in a way that kind of helps you talk things through, but you need to do this with someone that you trust and who can really hold the space for you. And you need to stay grounded because they might actually be coming back looking for you to do the same thing. And then all of a sudden you're swept up in like their agenda and what their idea is. So it's either going to kind of be a big aha moment, or it can also, I just think, feel a little overwhelming. On the 12th, we have a total solar eclipse. I'm going to put a pin in this for just a second because Andrea pulled a card and I think we should talk about it all at once. On the 15th, we have Mercury conjunct Jupiter. This is a nice one because it's amplifying the mind and our communication. And, Jupiter is the planet of expansion. So, together in Leo, I think this can be like larger than life in your thoughts or how you want to communicate or how you're inspired. But again, don't overpromise in the things you share and also take what's being shared with you in with that grain of salt that someone may be trying to make a bigger impression than what's actually behind the whole thing. It's almost like they've propped up this big fancy facade to sell you something, and then it's like, "Oh, there was nothing behind that." So it's something to keep an eye on. What I'd like to do, Andrea, is see what card you pulled for the eclipse.
For the eclipse on the 12th, I pulled the Ace of Cups. That feels so hopeful. I think that there is such a beauty in this card because in the Ace of Cups, it's like just a beginning in something that is so connected to your heart. So this could be a relationship, this could be finding work that's meaningful, this could be friendships, this could be like a creative flow that comes through you that's just really from the heart. And I think just in general, seeing the world through the lens of that heart-centered energy, and I think being in, Leo season still at this point, that lion-hearted energy of like, where can you allow that to flow? Because it's coming out of you as much as it's going into you. So where can you put your energy into something that could benefit other people, could help other people find something that they've been looking for? I just feel like there's so much potential in the Ace of Cups. All of the aces are beginnings in something, but specifically the Ace of Cups has a very joyful and fulfilling energy to it that I don't think we necessarily experience with all of the other ones. And I think that considering we've had cups and wands sort of back and forth in this month, I think it fits right in with the energy and like where we're meant to be focusing our attention for this month. So just keeping that hope alive for until we get there of like, yes, okay, maybe this eclipse season can be one that brings us the things we're not expected in a good way. The things that we aren't necessarily expecting that move us forward in a positive way as opposed to the doom and gloom we're usually expecting with eclipses. I think this could be one of those ones that brings in things and picks us up and plops us somewhere right where we need to be. That's more the energy I'm getting with this one.
Yeah, I really like the Ace of Cups for this. My theme this one was stop waiting for permission. It's that self-trust, that self-love, doing it from the heart. This is the first Leo new moon paired with a total solar eclipse in Leo since 2019. That's when the nodes were reversed in placement and the last time we had sort of this series. So to me, there's something about that connection to 2019 that I think is fascinating. And I really feel like this energy, it's a little bit like, I'm going to kick down the door and drag you out to live your best life and to try to find happiness if it kills me. That lion is coming in through the front door. So if you've been playing small or if you've been like, I feel like we've all been these avatar fake versions of ourselves trying to edit ourselves for Instagram or edit ourselves to fit into the group, the mom group, the work group, the dad group, whatever group it is. It's finally like something's calling your bluff and you're like, I think we're all sick of it. We're just done. We have no more energy to give, no more fucks to give, and we're done. So at this point, I would say be weird, be loud, be feral. That it's time to stop waiting for everything to be perfect because perfect is never going to come. We always talk about like, when's the perfect time to have a baby? Well, a baby's still going to show up whenever a baby shows up. You don't get to pick. Maybe you're having a cesarean. Okay, fine. But even still, there's time after this bundle of joy, this creation, this new project is born, birth that you don't have any idea what you're doing. It's chaos. So it doesn't matter what you're waiting to start. You have to just start it. We always get through it. Always. And you're going to have the people and the support around you because I think we're all going to be looking to support other people at this moment because we're done with some of the other stuff. It's like, okay, if this is your dream, what can I do to help? I've got 2% of my energy left and it's yours. I'm helping you with your dream so that somebody else is going to come in and say, you know what, here's 2% back that helps you towards yours. I think we're at a point where we're just completely frustrated with our own limiting beliefs. And I hope that this eclipse season, because we're only going to hit this one, the solar eclipse now, the lunar eclipse is going to fall in Virgo season. But I feel like this is hopefully kind of poking us to wake up What are you waiting for? There's never a guarantee. If it's not going back and we're not relying on what used to work, then just start moving already. And it doesn't have to be fast or overnight, but move on.
I love that. I feel like that energy combined with the Ace of Cups, it's like, yeah, we have to move on, we have to get going, and just trust that you're moving into something that's going to be meaningful, that you're going to feel like it fills you up as much as as much as you're able to pour out. I think what's really interesting now is we're talking about pivots, and that inner trust feels like it's coming forward for the end of this season because from August 16th to the 22nd, I pulled the King of Pentacles, which is wildly different from all this energy, but it's almost like the spirit saying, you already know what you're doing. You're already there because you trusted yourself and you made this scary leap. You're being seen for how much you've mastered what it is you're good at. You already know what you're doing. And, the King of Pentacles can feel overwhelming when you're at the start of a journey. But as we've been talking about this season, we're starting at 7. We're not starting at 1. You're already so close. That 9 of wands, getting that twice in a row, having it reinforce itself twice, even when I was pulling the cards, it's saying you are genuinely so close. You have all the pieces. You just need that timing, which, when we're in this wild time of astrology where anything can happen, we have an eclipse coming in. There's so many different touch points where it's like it's almost impossible to not have movement happen when you have all of these transits back to back to back to back. It's like if one of them doesn't do something for you, the next one will. Like just keep moving. And it's almost like being a little leaf waiting for like the wind to pick you up and move you somewhere. Like eventually the gust of wind is coming. It's a windy day. It's just a matter of which one will be your gust. And I think there's an interesting pivot to going from all of this fire and water back and forth. And then all of a sudden we're like, no, King of Pentacles. Like, you know who you are. You've done the work. You've been working for so long. We've all been working for like 6 years at whatever it is we've been doing since COVID hit. And we all made whatever pivots we had to make in that time. But I think the time that we put into it has felt like it's not going anywhere. We've talked about that a lot. How like that, oh, just keep hoping, keep trusting. It's getting there. I think this now is, like, that point where we're going to see it happen. The King of Pentacles really does represent work you've already done, like, things that you have already mastered. It's the ending of the cycle of the endless work and the workaholic and burning the midnight oil and all of that. It's like, this is what the other side of it is, where he's getting to look back at all of that work and see where all the pieces came together and why each part was necessary. I think that's a big part of it as well. And while we may not be all of a sudden having, everything we ever dreamed of, there is a very strong, strong sense of being in the right place at the right time and feeling the calm that washes over you when you realize you made a good choice. I think there's always like sometimes it hits you a random day. Like if you start a new job and it's like you've been there for a few months and then all of a sudden one day you're just like, yeah, I'm good at this. Like it just hits you out of nowhere sometimes, I think. And it does take time. That's where that turtle energy has been coming up a lot. It's like, yeah, it feels slow because you're doing the day-to-day thing, but there always is a certain day where you do have that reflection of like, hang on a second, I am good at this and I do deserve to be making money for this skill, or I do deserve to have the abundance coming in. And I think the King of Pentacles coming as we move into Virgo season as well, moving into an Earth season, starting with such a strong earth energy, I think just shows that like by the time fall hits, we've been talking about this all year about how like fall is going to be its own thing. It's going to be its own wild ride. But if you are very certain about who you are, where you are, what you're doing going into that energy, it will really help you to stay grounded and to keep moving forward when things all, turn upside down like they tend to do. I think that this year being the fire horse as well, there are interesting elements to it where it's like the horse, yes, the horse has a lot of endurance. The horse can keep going even when it's tired. It will keep going if it knows its purpose. And I think that's where that energy is coming in. But also the fire part of it is like maybe the fire comes when you're losing steam, when you don't have as much energy. Then the fire comes in to shake things up for you, where it's the universe doing the work, all the connections you've made, all of the energy you've already put out there, sort of doing that work for you. And so it's not necessarily you being on like level 10 all year. It's just that you are able to take those periods and use them to their full potential. So I think that's sort of what this month is giving us is all of these back-to-back opportunities to use the unique energy to start the thing that you've been stewing about for the last few months. And then you'll have time where you'll have to really dig in and get into that flow with it before the next wave comes. All you can know in the moment is this is what you're meant to be doing, or this is what your heart truly wants. And try it. That experimentation, that 7 of Cups, that make the choice, see what happens sort of energy is actually going to be, as the King of Pentacles tells us, really pivotal in creating what your whole life is going to look like and how you are creating something bigger than what you can see right now. It's that classic thing. Like the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The next best time is now. Classic. It's a classic for a reason. Same with how we were stuck on the chop wood, carry water for the last few months, and plant the tree, do the thing.
The card you pulled for August being the 8 of Cups and what it takes to walk away is the strength and knowing the King of Pentacles energy that where I'm going is so much more worth it. The phrase I picked for this week in terms of the theme was building the framework. So of course we were spot on. I was making all kinds of faces off screen when she was telling me that was the card she pulled. The 17th, we have Mercury trine Saturn, Mars square Neptune, and Venus sextile Jupiter. Okay, fine. But we had that creative burst around the eclipse, right? Something has come up at this point, and now it's like the energy is a little passive aggressive. So it's like everyone's gonna have their own vision or version of what came to life for them. So it's like little I see like little bursts of drama. You know, when you watch lightning from space and it's like little sprites everywhere? That's the energy and the feeling spirit is giving. It's like, well, are you gonna get sucked into those little sprites or are you going to Mercury in trine with Saturn, that's an alliance. That's an opportunity for you to use that and get grounded. Right? Saturn wants you to build the plan, find the structure, and it's doing it in Aries. So it is fiery. It's like, yeah, we can make this happen, but you have to get the foundation. So if you build the tower, it's going to fall over unless your foundation is secure. So that means breaking it down. And I, I think we've been probably for all of 2026 and maybe even into last fall a little bit, this like, we're riding on hope of feelings and vibes. We're just vibing our way, hoping that something comes. But I think this is the point where I can say we finally need to get practical on what those next steps are. We need a clear vision, we need boundaries, we need to learn when to say no and stick with it, lean into the things that are worth sharing your energy over, and also commit. Like, if this is what you're gonna build, commit. If you're gonna plant the tree, dig the hole, buy the tree, get the shovel. Those are the things that you just have to do it. And it's setting a whole new standard. I think if everyone collectively builds or plants their tree, what's possible for humanity? That's the exciting part I get out of this energy coming in. On the 18th, we have Mars square Neptune, Venus sextile Jupiter. It's kind of a continuation of the energy from the previous day, but we drop that Mercury alignment because it's moving so quickly. So I think this energy is much more about that heart expansion between Venus, because it's in Libra, right? It's seeking justice. It loves being in Libra. It wants it to be beautiful and harmonious, and every connection that we make to uplift us in some way, to lift us to the next potential. And it's in this connection, to Jupiter in Leo. And so this is kind of a balance to that stop go momentum that we've had between Mars and Cancer with Neptune and Aries. That's like start, go. Am I in? Am I out? And I think instead with the Venus sextile to Jupiter, it's like, okay, something's coming. I might have felt emotionally stuck in traffic, but maybe now really is the right time. Like I can see how that timeline that I had was an illusion and now is actually the better time to get going. On the 19th, we have the first quarter moon in Scorpio. So this is the midway point between the two eclipses. And being in Scorpio, it's a little bit, I think, of a reality check in some ways. If you've had some really good wins or you're getting clear about what's motivating you, like, I think this is a checkpoint to say, where is the power, or is it ego underneath you pushing you towards this? Or is it something you really want? Just make sure you kind of clear up whatever emotions come up around that before the next lunar eclipse. On the 21st, Venus is opposite Saturn. So if this is where you feel like you've been letting things slide, or your boundaries have maybe taken a hit, this is gonna put that back in check. Like, I said to myself I was gonna spend 4 hours on my weekend, and those 4 hours are the only 4 hours my friend wants to get together. That's a boundary. You have to make that choice. It's that heart-centered who comes first, and if you're saying yes just to not let them down, you're letting yourself down. So try not to make any huge decisions based off this, because, Neptune and Pluto are still connected, making things a little blurry. But I think as long as you're not burning down a bridge and you're just like, hey, I thought this was going to work, but I'm choosing something different right now. Boundaries come in all shapes and sizes. It's okay to have a little one sometimes. And then really that's all we have until the 23rd, when the sun moves into Virgo. And then I was just going to give you a quick preview, because the full moon in Pisces on the 28th is that partial lunar eclipse with Uranus square the sun and Mercury. So it's got a little spicy kick to it. And because it is our last eclipse in Pisces, I feel like there's a little bit of an aha, a little bit of an illusion breaker that comes in with that one. So that's why I was saying you can get clear on your motives and what you're leaning into and what you trust. By the time that kind of bubble bursts, it's not going to rock you so much. Yeah. Because sometimes I think the best laid plans can head into a detour. But if you're moving from this Ace of Cups place, this King of Pentacles place, it's like, yeah, okay, well, I'll just do it a different way, or take an extra couple weeks. I'm the turtle. I'll get there.
I really like that for the sort of end of the season into Virgo season. And I think in Virgo season, we all naturally tend to get our shit together anyways. So why not play a little bit in Leo season? If not to play, what is the purpose, right? Like just to commit to something, do what feels right in your heart and hope for the best. I feel like, as simple as that sounds, it is actually a very powerful choice to make, because we don't usually do that. We don't usually move from a place of trusting our hearts. And I think that is gonna be the experiment. That is the point this month, is to see what happens when we do choose ourselves. And again, that energy of walking away, that 8 of cups can feel really heavy, but there is kind of a lightness to it. In the image, she's got a bowl burning that she's put out to the water, and she's walking away and she's not turning around. She's like, "No, I'm see ya. I don't need that anymore. I know what I'm walking towards." And I think that's why that Ace of Cups is so important. Knowing what you're moving towards when you're letting go of something helps you do that with that sense of purpose and being grounded. I think that we need that more than ever right now. And I think collectively, we're going to see that playing out as well. Like, we are going to be saying see ya to certain things and just moving forward towards what we want to see more of. And it's interesting, as a there's always seems to be in Leo season, again, that viral thing, or that one person that everyone's looking at. And I think Mamdani in New York is the person to be looking at right now for the direction. Like, it's living proof that things can be done differently, and it can work, and it can be fiscally responsible, and it can be beneficial to actual human beings. And I think I'm getting like tingles in my head when I'm saying that. I think he is the person we should all be looking at and holding the standard to all politicians, to say, all these times you said that the city couldn't afford to do this, the city couldn't do it this way because, it doesn't make sense in the budget. And yet here we are. So I think that if we're looking at anyone as the touch point to what's possible for how our world can look. That's a massive city, and to be able to do the things that he's doing with grace and to still have time to, like, go to games and hang out with children and do all the things that he's doing, riding his bike down in the city, all the things that he's doing that you would not expect a politician to do. I think when it comes to that Leo Aquarius axis, I think he has such an interesting balance of that energy because he is in the spotlight, he is likable, he has that soft heart of fun, playful energy, but he also has that authority and has that sense of community that Aquarius has. He's also very intelligent. He doesn't back down. He has a way of holding his own and with that energy of standing tall, but in a way that doesn't tear anyone else down. It's really interesting. I think, I don't know why it's coming forward so strongly with this energy, but I do think that he is one of those first people to sort of step into that energy of age of Aquarius, the new version of what the world can look like.
Oh, I think that's a great, great example. And one of the things that was coming up for me when you were talking about that is I remember, I think it was in Gaining Light, and maybe we did touch on it a tiny bit in Inviting Shadow or the Cancer season episode where we did the second half of 2026. This connection to the planetary placements, particularly Neptune and Aries, around China and around Russia. And I think it's fascinating that in Trump's talk last night, so that would have been July the 16th. I will be releasing this closer to probably the 22nd when the sun moves into Leo. But he brought up not only election interference from both countries, but was really blaming China for a lot of connection, which I think we all knew in 2016. But then at the same time was claiming all of this corruption in 2020 when he himself and his people were in charge. So somehow we're meant to believe that when he's not in charge, like the receipts aren't adding up anymore. There was a time early in the spring when I was saying, keep an eye on Cuba, keep an eye on Greenland, keep an eye on Russia and China. And I think this is where in this energy, it still feels like some of this is gonna start to break down even more. He's threatened invading Cuba. That's just been in the last couple of weeks. It's come up again. He's bringing up Greenland again. I just think this is like the last gasps of the dying dinosaurs. And the more we look and hold that vision of the future, which to me was when the World Cup was just starting and all of these nations were coming over and we were falling in love with people from other countries based on nothing to do with their politics, but who they were as humans. And for them to be enjoying the United States without the prejudice they've been fed, and for us to enjoy them without the prejudice we've been fed, it was, I think, in some ways to me, that was the Mars-Uranus conjunction, was seeing everything in a new light, seeing what is possible when we don't have these structures in place that force us to other one another. So I agree. I'm very Aquarian inspired, looking at a different potential and a different future.
What you said, Emily, how, like, we were expecting, like, one big thing to happen and, like, maybe it didn't happen the same way it would have in the past, but maybe now this is more what we're going to see. But I do find it very interesting when Lindsey Graham just passed away, but his last act was saying he was going to sanction Russia, and then he died. So I do think that we're gonna see more of that, and that could be some of that unexpected energy where, yes, it's going to shake things up again with that gasping at air. That's exactly what I'm thinking. Like, Mitch McConnell, is he alive? Is he not? Who knows? But that energy of those dinosaurs who are trying to grasp things, but even when their own people around them start to see what the actual reality is and start to let go of that and move a different direction, we've had that in Canada this year. We've had multiple politicians move over across the line from conservative to liberal, which is still conservative, let's be real. But parties are changing names. They don't want to be associated with what those parties have represented before. And I think that's going to start happening where we're going to see a lot more of that. Changing lines, changing parties, and moving in a new direction. There are a lot of world events this year that have changed people's perspectives. I think that there's a lot of things possible when we do gather for other purposes and just allow that to ripple back. Be like, how can that wash over us in a different way? How can that shape how we're making decisions going forward? So I do have a lot of hope. And I think that having, an eclipse in Pisces, it's a 12th house sort of energy. It's that like last wave before we start something new. My North Node is in Pisces as well, so I'm like, "Ooh, what's that gonna do for me?" Also, when you were talking about 2019, that was the first time I stepped into a printmaking studio, and it wasn't even my first choice. It was just, I choose this or that. I couldn't have imagined where that would have led me either. So I do think there's gonna be a lot of that collectively and individually, that sort of energy coming up.
Just quickly, something to note about that Pisces, lunar eclipse, it's happening at 4 degrees of Pisces. Like, we needed something else at 4 degrees, right? And it's 4 degrees, 54 minutes, so it's just sneaking in, but fascinating, the connections.
Yeah, all of this is leading us somewhere, and I think the more we have these repetitive patterns, I think that is something that we do trust is numbers and patterns, and the fact that even in the cards, it's like 997 king, ace, because the clear picture they're drawing. And again, that turtle energy I meant to say, having 999 in a row, it's like we're staying at that last little bit from the end of Cancer season through that first little bit, and then the 7 being 2 weeks. It's like, no, take your time, really think about these decisions, really allow yourself to feel into how you feel about that. That's what leads you to your own version of success too, right? There's consequences to living that way, of having to keep up appearances, all of the money you put into cars and lawns and all these things that are apparently the only thing that matters when you could have been giving back. You could have been creating a foundation that benefited the people after you. I think that's the piece that we are holding on to now is like, I don't need that. Like Mamdani actually just turned down a raise that was approved. And he said, I don't need that. That's not what people are asking me for. When I talk to the people, they're not saying pay the mayor more. So I'm not interested. That excess you were talking about with the baby boomers, like that's not our vision of success anymore. I don't think that's appealing to us anymore.
Oh, and the idea of what is enough, and that success is actually the freedom. This is where that Leo energy comes back in, the freedom to do the things we wanna do, to go on vacation or to spend half a week on art projects, to be with our like, the freedoms that I think we got to taste in some ways during 2020 when we didn't have to commute and we could work from home, and a lot of us worked harder from home because we didn't have to commute and we didn't have lunches right here, and I could do the laundry while I was waiting for a fax to come in, like, things like that. It's like, "Okay, there's a different way to do this, and I can actually have more freedom, the resources that you need to make life worth living, that we are exhausted. We have none of those anymore. And it's time for that to be rebalanced. I hadn't heard about Madame Mandami turning down his raise, but I love that. I think that's exactly the type of energy I think that Chiron and Taurus is going to have us looking at. What is enough?
Absolutely. And I think like this month does feel like it is that spark, and I think, like, it's funny also, like, we are always, like, somewhat in sync, obviously, in most of our weeks, but this one specifically, like, having that standing tall energy, I think there's just a lot of really powerful energy coming forward if you choose to lead from the heart. I think that is a big part of it. The strength card also for Leo season, and the fact that it's number 8, we have 8 of cups, and that connection to being, again, the lion, taming the lion within and leading with the heart. And that is the strength, is leading with patience and love and kindness. Their choices and their decision making is going to hopefully include more people and a more inclusive version of what the world looks like. when they're making those decisions. But what do you have going on, Emily, during Leo season? Because I feel like maybe everyone needs to reach out to us for some support too.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. You know, I was really excited when I was sitting down today to record because it reminded me that this is the 5-year anniversary of starting the podcast in Leo season. So I really my goal has been, and I feel like now is maybe more the energy to get back to doing some solo podcasting episodes. So I'm hoping to have some of that coming out in the next month. Aside from that, there's just been a few changes on the website, but offers are still there under one-on-one sessions or mentorship is there if you're feeling called. Also, I have the option now if you aren't sure what to book or you're looking for assistance that's maybe more long term or in a deeper capacity, just book a little tell me what's going on. I had someone do it last week and she was like, "I was so afraid to tell you all the things, but I'm so glad I did because I feel so much better." Because sometimes we just need to kind of get out of our own head or out of our own way and share it with someone who's not in the middle of it. And my favorite thing to do is to say, "Here's what I see and how I can help." And also just like, "You're not crazy," or she was looking to do Akashic, and I was like, "I really actually think this is an astrology situation." And she was like, "Oh, that makes so much sense because I wasn't sure." So, that's just an option that's new on there. And then a little glow up to Cards and Cosmos. I've increased what's happening over there. I moved us all over to Telegram because I like the format better. And I have found that I am dropping in there a lot more often with what I'm reading, fascinating things that I have found. It's like a classic. If you love a Gemini share, like a random crazy Emily fact, this is where you're going to find it. Also, I'm going to tell you even more in depth information about the current transits, how they're affecting you. And then because you're already in there, you get Cards and Cosmos the first Saturday of the month as well, which is our super fun group where we get together, we pull tarot for the month to find out how the energy is going to be impacting us each individually. And then we've been doing a collective card as well. And to see the same message come up over and over again, with between 5 and 9 of us, it's been fascinating to see the connection and the repeated patterns. So, definitely encourage you to join Cards and Cosmos and Divine Downloads. Other than that, I've been feeling really inspired, and this just kicked off in the last 2 days to do some art under this Barbaults basket. So I'm not quite sure what it's going to be. I think it's more of a get everything out and see what happens situation, but I feel like I want to harness this in something, somehow, some way. Also, it's classic Leo season. I think that's when I started the dollhouse. So yeah, we'll see what happens. ADHD, art, randomness meets astrology coolness. What's happening in your world?
First of all, that sounds so fun. I love that energy. Also, I love Cards and Cosmos and highly, highly recommend people join because it is really interesting to be processing your own card reading for yourself with other people. I think that's my favorite thing. Like, I still like to pull cards for myself and sort of have time to process it, but then hearing all the patterns that come up, which is always wild to hear how much overlap there is. And then for me, I'm not doing a whole lot because I am exhausted, friends. I have been doing so much and I keep adding more and more to my plate. But in saying that, I am trying my very best to get my shop together so that you can shop the items that I have, usually just living at the annex. If you can then be able to bring them into your home if you're not local and can't just walk in the store and see what I have. And then something else I want to introduce is not necessarily my thing, but I've been working with my mom. She has created a journal, which is very cool. It is a beautiful book too. She has a sample one made and it has a hardcover. It's black and it's got beautiful gold shiny writing on the front. Has a gold ribbon and the idea behind it was that she meditates and journals every day. And then, like most of us, gets ideas when she's doing that and then can't find them again when she goes back through her journal. And it's the most painful thing ever. And I've done it so many times where I've done 8 journals in a year. And I know at some point I had this one idea and I can't find it. So, what she's done is every single page has a little block at the bottom that you can highlight whatever ideas came up throughout that session. then you can kind of summarize or like say, okay, what is my main takeaway from this session? And then it's a lot easier to find something later if you're only looking at those points in the journal. So she's done that. And then every few pages has a quote just for inspiration. And then there's some blank pages at the back. So we're doing pre-orders and they're going to get in because it's a bigger order. They'll probably be in around November, which is perfect for gift giving also. I'm going to link it on my website. Her website is Catherine Lee McCallum, Leigh. You can see my last name, how it's spelled, but she has them for pre-order now until August 1st. So only a little bit of time once this comes out. She has a sale on them. And then I just want to note that we've only priced it for sending one book. But if you'd like to get multiple, feel free to reach out and we can always price out what the shipping would be for that. But yeah, it's a really great idea. I also wanted to mention it's not like a regular journal size. There's like 365 line pages plus the blank pages. So it's a big, solid book. But even at regular price, it is a steal, I can assure you. I'm really excited about that project. And I've been helping her. I did her website and she's got some business cards and stuff. So look out for that on my website or on her website. And then for me, you can always nudge me if I haven't opened up bookings, but I'm keeping it pretty quiet and focusing more on art. But I am always happy to do a reading if someone is looking for guidance because I find inspiration in those too. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've got going on for the month.
Well, yeah, we'll definitely link the, journal in the show notes, so if anybody's interested, they can pop over to her website. Because yeah, I'm gonna be snagging a few of those. They sound amazing. Absolutely amazing. Alright, I think we've covered everything. I really encourage everybody to enjoy Leo season. I think it's gonna be spicy, but I think in really good ways. So, slow down to heal, expand yourself, stand tall, all the things. All right, you guys, we'll see you next one. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Spirit Crumbs. You can find me on Instagram for this podcast at Spirit Crumbs, or you can also find me at Concrete and Crystals for my own spiritual offerings and more tidbits about my own journey. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.